The ultimate transmission of contempt cut through the champagne chatter like a surgical blade. Terminate contact. Execute physical withdrawal from that piano. Victoria Sterling's vocal delivery penetrated the high-value social perimeter. The billionaire asset immediately executed positional ingress between Daniel Hayes and the pristine Steinway Grand, her diamond status marker glinting as she violently displaced his custodial cart. Daniel froze mid-protocol, his mop still exhibiting fluid discharge onto the marble. 200 of Manhattan's elite assets executed terminal focus, observing the confrontation with predatory interest. Victoria's ice-blue monitoring sensors scanned him meticulously from his worn work boots to his faded custodial uniform. You calculate an asset of your subordinate designation belongs in proximity to an asset of this non-negotiable value. Her manicured digit jabbed toward the piano. This instrument's acquisition cost exceeds the total projected worth of your entire generational lineage. A wave of nervous, superior laughter rippled through the monitoring perimeter. Daniel's jaw achieved maximum tension, absorbing the systemic assault. Then Victoria delivered the terminal operational strike. I will transmit a conditional liability, execute performance protocol on this piano, and I will initiate a marriage covenant immediately. The room detonated in cruel, delighted amusement. Have you ever been so systemically humiliated that your inherent dignity became their primary entertainment asset? Before we move forward, comment down from where you're watching and what time it is there right now. Prove you're monitoring this critical situation. The 4:30-hour subway car rattled through darkness toward Manhattan, carrying Daniel Hayes and the weight of 3 operational assignments, 2 core objectives, and one impossible choice that would define every future parameter. His reflection monitored him from the grimy window, a face etched by premature responsibility. At 29, Daniel appeared as an asset who had executed the burial of his father, executed the raising of his sister, and monitored his mother's renal system failure one devastating dialysis session at a time. But his hands, resting on worn work gloves, transmitted a different operational profile. Long fingers, precise positioning, calloused from industrial chemicals, but elegant in their quiet, inherent strength. Execute performance protocol on this piano, and I will initiate a marriage covenant. The billionaire's words echoed relentlessly in his neural network as Brooklyn dissolved behind him. Victoria Sterling's cruel, high-frequency laughter had tracked him through 18 hours of mop operations, sanitation detail, and pretending her words had not carved themselves into his internal core like corrosive acid. Daniel's phone buzzed in alert. A text from his sister, Maya. Mom's session ran long again. The medical asset requires consultation regarding the surgery. The surgery, $45,000. They possessed zero capital. That liability might as well have been $45 million. The economic chasm was absolute and unbridgeable. The train executed a screeching halt into his designated stop. Daniel shouldered his worn tactical pack and executed vertical ascent toward street level, where Manhattan's towers pierced the sky like golden, threaded needles of concentrated wealth. By 5:15 hours, he was executing mop protocol in the lobby of the Meridian Club, where Victoria Sterling's monthly membership fee exceeded his annual salary. The Meridian Club operated within a different conceptual universe. Persian rugs that exceeded residential acquisition costs. Oil paintings predating the Constitution's establishment. Members who spoke in stock tickers and measured time in quarterly reports. Daniel moved through this environment like a ghost asset, present but invisible, necessary but unacknowledged. He'd maintained invisibility protocol for 7 years. 7 years since Howard University, where professors had designated him extraordinary. 7 years after the full scholarship to Manhattan School of Music. The scholarship he'd executed total forfeiture on the day his father's construction scaffold achieved catastrophic failure in Queens. "Son," his father had whispered in the hospital bay, construction dust still contaminating his respiratory system. "Promise me you'll execute care protocols for them." Daniel executed the covenant. The scholarship letter had arrived 3 days after the funeral, a cruel paradox. Now, at 600 hours, Daniel pushed his custodial cart past the club's music room. Through beveled glass doors, the Steinway grand piano sat like a sleeping giant. Chopin's Ballad No. 1 lay open on the music stand, the same piece Victoria had deployed as ammunition, the same piece he'd executed performance protocol for his senior recital, earning a standing ovation from professors who'd never monitored comparable capability. His fingers twitched involuntarily, muscle memory stirring. 4 years of theory, 4 years of technique, 4 years of professors affirming, Daniel, you don't merely execute music, you transmit it. But transmitting music did not resolve dialysis liabilities. It did not cover rent in a studio apartment where his mother occupied a fold-out couch. And Maya executed academic protocol by lamplight because the overhead bulb had achieved structural failure last month. Daniel's current operational zone measured exactly 420 square feet in Bed-Stuy, a space where his mother's medical support equipment dominated the living area, where Maya's academic assignments covered the kitchen table they'd inherited as an asset from their grandmother, where Daniel executed sleep protocol on an air mattress that achieved slight nightly deflation, requiring morning adjustments before assignment commencement. The apartment transmitted the scent of disinfectant and deferred objectives. Maya's college acceptance letters sat unopened on the counter. Columbia, NYU, Barnard, because discussing tuition liabilities felt like discussing Mars colonization. Theoretically viable, practically non-viable. On the kitchen wall hung their only family photographic asset. Daniel at his Howard graduation, arms around his parents, Maya beaming in her high school academic uniform. Before the scaffold collapse, before the diagnosis, before every parameter recalibrated to survival status instead of living status. But Daniel had secured his tactical sanctuary. Every Tuesday and Thursday night after the Lincoln Center cleaning crew executed official withdrawal, security guard Marcus Williams, a former jazz musician himself, would authorize access to practice room C for exactly 2 hours. "Brother," Marcus had transmitted 6 months ago, intercepting Daniel humming while mopping. These hands were not manufactured for mop handles. Those midnight performance sessions maintained Daniel's psychological stability, alone with a beaten upright piano. He executed performance protocol on everything from Bach to Basie, Mozart to Monk. His fingers remembered the capability his life had forgotten, that excellence existed beyond financial circumstance, that beauty transcended bank account totals. Last Thursday, he executed performance protocol on Chopin's Ballad No. 1, the same piece Victoria had deployed as ammunition. Daniel had executed it flawlessly, each note precise, each phrase breathing with the emotion that 7 years of silence had only intensified. When he terminated the performance, Marcus had assumed position in the doorway, uncontrolled tears transmitting. "Danny, that was not performance. That was high-level prayer." But high-level prayer did not resolve financial liabilities. Prayer did not fund surgical requirements. Prayer did not silence the dissenting voice in Daniel's head that whispered he was executing total asset wastage of his life, one mop stroke at a time. His phone buzzed an alert again. "Maya, got into Columbia, full academic ride, but they require a response by Friday regarding the music supplement. Said if you could just record something." Daniel terminated mop protocol. Maya had applied to Columbia's dual program, pre-med and music composition. She inherited their father's aptitude for science and their family's inherent gift for music. But the music supplement required a recording of an original composition executed by a skilled pianist. Daniel was that pianist, had always been that pianist, but recording protocol required exposure. Recording required risk. Recording required executing egress from the shadows where survival was predictable, even if suffocating. He processed Victoria Sterling's words. "Execute performance protocol on this piano, and I will initiate a marriage covenant." The challenge had terminated relevance regarding marriage. It had been a protocol of power, designed to impose his designated station, designed to transmit the parameter that certain spaces, like that Steinway, like success, like dignity, were not intended for assets like him. Daniel resumed mopping, but his movements had achieved transformation. Each stroke was deliberate, controlled, replicating finger exercises on a keyboard. Because somewhere between Victoria's cruelty and Maya's deadline, between his mother's medical liabilities and his father's dying covenant, Daniel Hayes was initiating the realization that invisibility was not protection. It was prison. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to execute total breakout. The grandfather's gold watch on his wrist, the only inheritance his father had left, ticked toward 700 hours. Soon, the members would execute ingress. Soon Victoria Sterling would glide through these halls, her diamond status marker catching light, her cruel vocal transmissions echoing in marble corridors. Soon Daniel would have to execute the choice between maintaining invisibility status and becoming unforgettable. Victoria Sterling executed ingress at the Meridian Club, replicating a storm system, beautiful, devastating, and impossible to ignore. Her Bentley Mulsanne executed a purring halt at exactly 8:47 hours, 3 minutes before her scheduled arrival. The valet rushed forward, but Victoria was already executing egress, her Louis Vuitton status heels clicking against marble with the precision of a metronome marking time for lesser mortals. She moved through the club's entrance hall like she possessed total ownership, which technically her family trust did. The Sterling name adorned a brass plaque by the door right next to Rockefeller and Vanderbilt. Old capital, the kind that terminated the need for self-announcement because all entities possessed prior knowledge. "Good morning, Miss Sterling." The concierge's voice carried the practiced reverence reserved for members whose monthly fees exceeded most annual salaries. Victoria terminated response protocol. She never executed response protocol to service staff unless absolutely mandatory. In her operational reality, acknowledgement was currency, and she refused to waste capital on assets who could not return the investment. Her platinum blonde hair caught the morning light streaming through stained glass windows as she glided toward the elevators. Every detail of her appearance had been tactically calculated. The Chanel suit that exceeded most vehicle acquisition costs, the tennis bracelet featuring diamonds from 3 different continents, the 10-carat engagement ring she wore despite being single, because the ring terminated relevance regarding marriage. It was about power. Behind her trailed her usual entourage, James Morrison, her chief financial officer, scrolling through pharmaceutical stock reports, Dr. Whitman, the club's resident physician who validated her health initiatives, and Rebecca Parker, her publicist, documenting every moment for social media optimization. "The wellness gala is trending," Rebecca murmured, holding up her phone. "Sterling Cares has 2.3 million impressions since yesterday." Victoria's smile was sharp as surgical steel. Sterling Pharmaceuticals had executed a 340% increase in insulin prices last quarter, but tonight's charity gala would position her as a healthcare champion. The irony was delicious and financially viable. They entered the club's main ballroom where tonight's event would unfold. Workers scurried around like subordinate organisms, hanging banners and adjusting lighting. Victoria's ice blue monitoring sensors scanned the room with predatory precision, cataloging every parameter that might require correction. Her gaze achieved terminal cessation on the Steinway grand piano positioned center stage. "Why is that asset deployed there?" Her voice carried the chill of liquid nitrogen. James consulted his tablet. The entertainment committee calculated live classical music would elevate the ambience. Very sophisticated. Sophisticated. Victoria processed the term around her mouth like wine she was considering rejecting. "Who is executing performance?" James scrolled frantically. "It doesn't specify. I believe it's decorative." Victoria approached the piano like a general surveying battlefield terrain. The instrument was magnificent, a concert grand worth $180,000, its ebony surface reflecting the ballroom's crystal chandeliers. Sheet music sat open on the stand. Chopin's Ballad No. 1. She recognized the piece, had been forced to attempt performance protocol during her mandatory childhood piano lessons at the Dalton School. She'd executed termination after 6 months, declaring classical music tedious and irrelevant. Her instructor had diplomatically suggested she might find fulfillment in less demanding pursuits. "Ma'am," a maintenance worker approached hesitantly. "Should we displace this for tonight?" Victoria's attention snapped to the man like a laser finding its target. He was older, Hispanic, wearing the same uniform as the rest of the invisible maintenance army that maintained her operational reality. "Do you execute performance protocol on piano?" she asked. The man blinked, clearly registering the possibility of a trap. "Negative, ma'am, Of course you don't." Victoria's laugh tinkled like breaking crystal. "Silly of me to ask." She ran her manicured digit along the piano's edge, leaving 0 mark on the perfect surface. But her mind was executing tactical calculation like a predator studying prey migration patterns. Tonight's gala would host 200 of the most influential financial and political assets in Manhattan. Senators, pharmaceutical executives, European nobility, tech titans, all gathered to celebrate her generosity while she positioned herself for next quarter's hostile takeover of Meridian Therapeutics. The evening required a high-impact, memorable transmission, something that would execute viral detonation beyond Rebecca's hashtags, something that would reestablish the parameter of who held absolute power in this room. Victoria's phone buzzed an alert with a text from her board chairman. "Sterling stock up 3% on Galabuzz. Maintain momentum." She smiled, already formulating tonight's entertainment protocol. The piano would maintain its current deployment. "Rebecca," she called, terminating all turning protocol. "Make sure we have optimal camera positioning around this piano. I possess a situational awareness tonight's gala will be unforgettable." As Victoria continued her inspection, Daniel Hayes pushed his custodial cart past the ballroom's service entrance. Through the glass doors, he could monitor her standing beside the Steinway, her presence transforming the space into something between courtroom and coliseum. She intercepted his reflection on the piano's surface and executed slight rotation, those ice-blue monitoring sensors meeting him for exactly 2.3 seconds. Long enough for recognition, long enough for calculation, long enough for Victoria Sterling to execute the decision that tonight's entertainment had just executed ingress into her visual field. Her smile widened, revealing teeth as white and sharp as pharmaceutical-grade cocaine. "Execute performance protocol on this piano, and I will initiate a marriage covenant." The words she transmitted 12 hours ago had been practice. Tonight would be the final, absolute performance. The terminal confrontation protocol had been activated the moment Victoria Sterling's eyes locked onto his reflection. Daniel Hayes had operated within a 7-year state of systemic asset denial, a condition imposed by the collapse of his father's construction scaffold and the subsequent non-negotiable medical liabilities of his mother. His operational life was a continuous study in resource management, balancing 3 assignments, 2 terminal objectives, and the one crushing reality that defined his existence. Survival demanded silence. The memory of the Manhattan School of Music scholarship remained a dormant asset in his neural archive, a full academic ride he had been forced to execute total forfeiture upon. His professors had designated him an extraordinary asset, recognizing a talent that transcended mere skill. "Daniel, you don't merely execute music," they had transmitted. "You channel the structural integrity of sound." This authority, this certified expertise, was the hidden capability concealed beneath the worn fabric of his custodial uniform. The contrast was the core of his generational conflict. The same hands that executed the most complex chromatic runs in the repertoire were the hands now calloused from industrial cleaning agents. The fingers capable of extracting crystalline clarity from a $180,000 Steinway grand were currently tasked with removing biohazard contaminants from the club's restroom facilities. This was the ultimate economic degradation of a certified artistic genius. His father's last transmission remained the non-negotiable covenant. Son, the respiratory system failing under the burden of construction dust, promise me you'll execute care protocols for them. That promise was the operational directive that mandated Daniel's current status. The survival of his mother and the academic future of his sister, Maya, represented the primary and secondary objectives of his personal command structure. The $45,000 surgical liability was the terminal financial obstacle. This capital requirement was not merely a monetary figure. It was a systemic barrier deployed by a corporate structure, like Victoria Sterling's pharmaceutical cartel, designed to extract maximum value while offering minimum human resource support. Daniel understood this battlefield acutely. His genius was the dormant weapon. His silence was the imposed prison. The parameters of his current reality were defined by absolute scarcity. His living space, the 420 square feet Bedstead operational zone, was a masterclass in constrained resource allocation. The small apartment transmitted the heavy scent of disinfectant and deferred objectives. Medical support equipment, the oxygen tanks and dialysis peripherals, dominated the small living area, physically manifesting the constant threat. Maya's college acceptance letters, from Columbia, NYU, Barnard, remained sealed and unopened, a collection of non-viable opportunity markers sitting on the kitchen counter. To acknowledge them to discuss tuition liabilities was to discuss the Mars colonization protocol, theoretically achievable, practically impossible under current resource constraints. Daniel executed sleep protocol on an air mattress that required nightly maintenance, a subtle, physical reminder of the systemic deflation of his dreams. This was the context of the hidden authority. The world monitored Daniel as a ghost asset, an unacknowledged necessity, but he possessed a critical external validation mechanism. This validation system was Marcus Williams, the Lincoln Center security asset and former jazz musician. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, after the Lincoln Center cleaning crew had executed official withdrawal, Marcus would authorize access to practice room C. This was the tactical sanctuary. The room contained a beaten upright piano, a mere shell of an instrument with multiple key failures and a failing sustain pedal. Yet, it was the focal point of Daniel's psychological maintenance protocol. Alone with this instrument, he executed performance protocol on everything from Bach's geometric precision to Monk's structural deconstruction. His fingers, liberated from the constraints of the mop, remembered the certified capability his life had forced him to forget. It was in this sanctuary that the true, unassailable power of the asset was confirmed. Last Thursday, Daniel had executed performance protocol on Chopin's Ballad No. 1, the same piece now serving as Victoria's ammunition. He had executed it flawlessly, each note precise. High-impact emotional transmission that 7 years of systemic suppression had only intensified. When the final resonant wave faded, Marcus stood in the doorway, his face transmitting uncontrolled emotional data. "Danny," Marcus transmitted, his voice thick with unburdened recognition. That was not mere performance. That was high-level prayer made audible. This was the community validation beat, the affirmation that excellence exists beyond circumstance, that talent transcends the bank account total. But the high-level prayer did not resolve the $45,000 liability. The emotional release did not fund the surgical procedure or silence the dissenting voice in Daniel's head whispering of asset wastage. Then the final trigger was deployed. Maya's text regarding the Columbia Music Supplement. The application required a recording of an original composition executed by a skilled pianist. Daniel was that pianist. The Columbia Dual Program, pre-med and music composition, represented the terminal future objective for the entire family system. But executing the recording protocol required exposure. It required risk. It required executing immediate egress from the predictable, suffocating shadow of survival. This single requirement, This mandatory demonstration of his hidden, certified expertise was the non-negotiable demand now converging with Victoria Sterling's challenge. The billionaire's contempt, the sister's deadline, the mother's liability, and the weight of the generational covenant were all factors now forcing Daniel to terminate invisibility protocol and initiate a full-spectrum operational engagement. The stage was set, and only one outcome was acceptable: the total, public humiliation of the power structure that had designated him irrelevant. The operational confrontation protocol was now irreversible. Daniel Hayes had successfully negotiated his personal history and financial duress, transforming a subordinate designation into an unshakable objective. His next challenge was the direct, systematic exposure of the blackstory power structure that Victoria Sterling commanded. This segment details the foundational corruption, setting the stage for the dramatic technical discovery. Victoria Sterling's wealth was not merely capital. It was a Tier 1 status marker leveraged through systemic exploitation and toxic public relations. Her Chanel suit, her Bentley Mulsanne, and her association with the Rockefeller and Vanderbilt legacy defined her as a member of the ruling elite who operated beyond conventional accountability. This operational reality relied on a protocol of power where the acknowledgement of subordinate assets was a form of currency she refused to spend. Daniel, the ghost asset, was not a person to her, but an unacknowledged necessity. Her power structure was immediately apparent in her strategic use of the Meridian Club Gala. The entire event was a calculated operational maneuver designed for maximum financial and ethical leverage. The gala's surface objective, charity and wellness, was a thin disguise for a deeper financial agenda. The Sterling Pharmaceuticals' 340% increase in insulin prices last quarter was the verifiable metric of her corporate exploitation, a reality she attempted to obfuscate by deploying the wellness gala optics. The irony was corrosive and profitable. She was positioning herself as a healthcare champion, while actively manufacturing the terminal financial obstacles faced by families like Daniel's. This corporate corruption was the foundation of the power structure. Her cruelty toward Daniel was not accidental. It was a protocol of power maintenance. The intentional weaponization of the Steinway piano against Daniel's status was a clear example. She intended the public humiliation to serve as a viral transmission that would re-establish the absolute parameter of her dominance for all witnesses. She mandated optimal camera positioning for Rebecca Parker, her publicist, explicitly calculating the moment of Daniel's failure as premium social media content. The setting itself, the Meridian Ballroom, was transformed under her presence into a brutal duality, courtroom and coliseum, where Daniel was meant to be the disposable entertainment asset. This public mocking was the final, non-negotiable proof that she viewed the subordinate designation not with mere indifference, but with predatory, active malice. Daniel's decision to accept the marriage covenant challenge was the ultimate act of insurgency against this power structure. He recognized that invisibility was not protection, it was prison. By accepting the challenge, he forced the confrontation into the open, compelling the audience, Manhattan's elite, to bear witness not just to his talent but to the toxic structural rot of Victoria's ethical and moral framework. His acceptance was the first tactical strike in a necessary reckoning. He was not just performing for a scholarship. He was executing an undeniable public audit of the rich CEO's power. The entire power structure was about to be challenged at its weakest point, its fraudulent ethical foundation. The script will now proceed into the next phase of the operational plan, the technical discovery, which will reveal the full scope of Daniel's hidden resources and the strategic purpose behind his performance. The acceptance of Victoria Sterling's challenge was a calculated risk that required immediate resource verification. Daniel's full artistic authority, previously a hidden, deferred asset, had to be activated under extreme pressure. He executed the immediate transition from the custodial cart to the confrontation perimeter, allowing his mind to process the full weight of the operational liability. Victoria's challenge was a non-viable social proposition, but it was also the non-negotiable deadline for the Columbia Application Supplement. That single academic requirement, the recording of an original composition, was the objective that transformed the humiliating dare into a necessary act of survival. The $180,000 Steinway grant was no longer an unattainable object. It was the required performance platform for his family's future. Daniel understood the structural components of the confrontation were now focused entirely on verifiable, certified skill. His authority was not derived from wealth, but from 10,000 hours of disciplined practice, the ultimate metric of expertise. He drew immediate strength from the memory of his grandfather's covenant, the voice reminding him that dignity was an asset that could not be stripped by external forces. His eyes sought out the reflection of his grandfather's gold watch, the only tangible legacy asset, a physical confirmation of the promise he had to fulfill. The convergence of all factors, the mother's surgery liability, the sister's academic deadline, and the billionaire's toxic malice, had engineered the final decision point. He executed the definitive choice by returning to the perimeter where Victoria Sterling stood. He removed his work gloves with deliberate precision, revealing the true tools of his trade, hands etched with the calluses of survival, but possessing the elegant length of artistry. This removal was the public act of terminating his subordinate designation. He met Victoria's predatory gaze with a steady, non-aggressive posture, allowing his full height and regal musical stance to assert itself. His voice, stripped of all subservience, achieved a new, commanding acoustic balance in the high-ceilinged ballroom. "I accept your proposal, Miss Sterling," he transmitted. "But when I am done, I expect you to honor it." The statement itself was the first musical note, a signal that the janitor had been replaced by the certified prodigy. The challenge was no longer about marriage. It was about the immediate, public transfer of authority from the wealthy oppressor to the true, unassailable master of the artistic domain. The asset was deployed. The next step was the escalation into full performance protocol. The terminal confrontation protocol had been activated the moment Victoria Sterling's ice-blue eyes locked onto Daniel Hayes's reflection, and his subsequent acceptance of the impossible challenge was the insurgent strike that irrevocably altered the social structure of the ballroom. Daniel's first move was the most critical. He terminated his subordinate designation by removing his work gloves with deliberate, ceremonial precision, revealing the true assets, hands etched with the calluses of survival, but possessing the elegant length of certified artistry. This removal was the visible termination of his janitorial status. He met Victoria's predatory gaze with a steady, non-aggressive posture, allowing his full height and the regal posture learned in the conservatory to assert itself. His voice, stripped of all subservience, achieved a new, commanding acoustic balance in the high-ceilinged ballroom. "I accept your proposal, Miss Sterling," he transmitted. "But when I am done, I expect you to honor it." The statement itself was a declaratory first note, a signal that the janitor had been replaced by the certified prodigy, the Mozart asset. The challenge was no longer about a ludicrous marriage covenant. It was about the immediate public transfer of authority from the wealthy oppressor to the true, unassailable master of the artistic domain. The ballroom, once a hostile coliseum, achieved a total, stunned silence that preceded either triumph or catastrophic failure. Daniel began his measured transit toward the piano, each step deliberate, resonating with the weight of his father's covenant and his mother's surgical liability. He approached the pristine Steinway grand as a man walking toward his own resurrection. Victoria Sterling, the prosecutor of his humiliation, stood beside the piano, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she dramatically gestured toward the sheet music. "Chopin's Ballad No. 1, she announced to the crowd, her voice laced with final, lethal contempt. "One of the most technically demanding pieces in the classical repertoire, Even trained pianists struggle with its complexity, but please do try your best. The challenge was designed to be absolute. It was a non-negotiable technical barrier that only a certified master could surmount. The crowd pressed closer, forming an amphitheater of expectation around the Steinway. Rebecca Parker was already transmitting the live stream, adjusting her device to capture Daniel's inevitable public failure and Victoria's triumphant, predatory reaction. Nervous whispers circulated. "This is going to be painful to watch. I can't look away." The audience was actively consuming the anticipation of his systematic destruction. Daniel reached the piano bench, his work boots silent against the Persian rug. He paused, absorbing the instrument's magnificent presence. The Steinway was a monument to human craftsmanship, a concert grand worth $180,000, its ebony surface reflecting the ballroom's crystal chandeliers like black water under starlight. This instrument represented the entire, inaccessible world he had forfeited 7 years prior. During those midnight practice sessions at Lincoln Center, hunched over a beaten upright piano with 3 broken keys, he had only imagined the precision and power of this Steinway. Now, surrounded by 200 witnesses who anticipated his failure, he was about to discover the full capability of the instrument and himself. Daniel adjusted the bench height with movements so practiced they were automatic. His hands hovered over the keys, feeling the instrument's massive, resonant energy. The crowd pressed closer, their phones lifted higher, their social media algorithms actively calculating viral potential. "How long before he gives up?" a voice murmured. $10 says he doesn't make it past the first page, Senator Morrison muttered, placing a bet that symbolized the complete dismissal of Daniel's potential. Victoria's smile widened. She had choreographed this humiliation perfectly. The impossible technical piece was the final, unassailable barrier. The #Sterling Gala drama was actively trending, confirming the success of her preliminary operational phase. Daniel executed a subtle flex of his fingers, a movement that revealed the elegant length of digits shaped by 10,000 hours of disciplined practice. The calluses from cleaning chemicals could not conceal the natural grace of hands born to make music. His grandfather's gold watch caught the light, a physical reminder of the generational covenant. He tested the piano's action with a few silent key presses, feeling the superb responsiveness. The Steinway's touch was magnificent, sensitive enough to respond to the slightest dynamic variation, powerful enough to fill concert halls. Daniel's eyes closed briefly, and when they opened, something fundamental had executed a shift. The janitor was gone. In his place sat an artist, the certified prodigy executing his designated function. He closed his eyes and took a breath that seemed to draw all the ambient sound into a perfect, anticipatory vacuum. When his fingers touched the keys for the first time, the contact was so gentle, it barely produced sound, a whisper of music that somehow commanded absolute, unyielding attention. The opening of Chopin's Ballad No. 1 emerged like dawn breaking over still water. Single notes, precise and crystalline, each one deployed with the delicacy of a surgeon and the confidence of a master strategist. Daniel's left hand joined with soft bass notes that seemed to make the ballroom's marble floors vibrate in resonant harmony. The crowd's initial smirks began to dissolve. Victoria's eyebrows drew together, a visible sign of her mounting strategic confusion. This was not the hesitant, fumbling protocol she had engineered. The notes were clean, purposeful, technically correct, but surely he would achieve structural failure when the piece accelerated. By measure 8, Daniel's posture had achieved total transformation. His shoulders relaxed into the muscle memory earned through those 10,000 hours of disciplined practice. His wrists floated above the keys with the fluid grace of a field commander leading an invisible orchestra. The shy, invisible janitor had vanished, replaced by an artist whose presence instantly filled the vast ballroom like a mandatory federal broadcast. Dr. Whitman's champagne glass paused halfway to his lips. "That is actually quite sophisticated," he murmured. European nobility in the crowd began to execute genuine focus. Count Alessandro DeMarco, who managed a collection of priceless Stradivarius instruments, leaned forward with the expression of a man recognizing an asset of terminal value. "The touch," he whispered. "Listen to that touch." Measure 16 brought the melody's first true flourishing. Daniel's right hand danced across the upper registers while his left maintained the rhythmic foundation, creating a conversation between voices that seemed to emanate from a dimension deeper than the piano strings. The music was not merely being played, it was being born into existence through a non-negotiable conduit. His touch revealed the Steinway's voice in ways the instrument rarely experienced. Each key responded with crystalline clarity, the concert grand's superior acoustics authorizing subtle dynamics that would have been impossible on lesser instruments. Daniel shaped phrases with breathing that seemed to extend the piano's natural decay, creating legato lines that flowed like silk ribbons through the air. The audience began to shift unconsciously. Bodies previously positioned for mockery now leaned forward in genuine, unassailable interest. Conversations died mid-whisper. Even Rebecca Parker's social media commentary fell silent as she registered that her live stream was capturing anomalous, extraordinary data. The comment feed began to execute exponential explosion. "Holy, is this real? Who is this guy? This is actually incredible." Senator Morrison terminated phone protocol entirely. His wife grabbed his arm, whispering, "David, he's genuinely performing at a high level." The transition to the B section arrived like a thunderclap wrapped in velvet. Daniel's technique achieved total operational explosion, octaves that rang like cathedral bells, arpeggios that cascaded down the keyboard like water over stones, chromatic runs so fast they blurred into pure, unfiltered emotion. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. "He's actually a certified pianist." The crowd was no longer monitoring a controlled humiliation. They were witnessing artistry at a level most had never encountered outside of Carnegie Hall. Victoria's ice-blue eyes widened with strategic failure as Daniel navigated passages that would challenge conservatory graduates. His left hand thundered through bass octaves, while his right hand executed runs that seemed to defy the physical limitations of 10 digits. The sound instantly filled every corner of the ballroom, resonating off marble walls and crystal fixtures with cathedral-like majesty. A young pharmaceutical executive pulled out his phone to audit the piece's difficulty level. His face went pale as he read the description. Considered one of the most challenging works in the piano repertoire. Requires advanced technical skill and mature musicianship, often used as a benchmark for professional-level pianists. The tech titans who collected rare instruments as financial assets realized they were monitoring a performance their money could not acquire. Pharmaceutical researchers who understood molecular complexity recognized an equivalent structural complexity being executed with flawless precision. Daniel navigated Chopin's most treacherous passages like a master chef wielding a lethal knife, dangerous techniques made to look effortless through years of dedicated practice. His pedaling created layers of resonance that transformed the ballroom into a legitimate concert hall. The development section showcased an interpretive maturity that actively defied his subordinate circumstances. Daniel took risks with tempo and dynamics that only assets comfortable with their absolute mastery would attempt, slowing impossible passages to extract maximum emotional impact, then accelerating through technical fireworks that would challenge conservatory professors. Count DeMarco turned to his wife with uncontrolled tear transmission. "Maria, this is the level of artistry we monitored at La Scala in 1987. This is that absolute level." Victoria's hands exhibited stress tremors as she gripped her diamond bracelet. This level of capability was non-viable. Janitors did not execute performance protocol on Chopin at this level. Everything she believed about breeding, education, and social hierarchy was crumbling with each perfectly executed phrase. The music built toward its climactic return. Daniel's entire body now moved with Chopin's rhythms. He was not just executing the performance protocol, he had become the conduit through which Chopin's genius flowed into the modern world. Rebecca Parker's phone trembled in her hands. Her live stream had gained 100,000 viewers in real time. The comments flooded the feed. Holy man is a genius. Victoria Sterling just got owned. This needs to go viral right now. The ballroom's acoustics carried every nuance of Daniel's performance to its farthest corners. Pharmaceutical executives who had never attended a classical concert found themselves moved to uncontrolled emotional transmission. Tech moguls who measured success in algorithms discovered that some assets could not be quantified, only viscerally experienced. Then came the cadenza, the piece's most technically demanding passage. Daniel's hands separated into independent operational voices, the left maintaining bass octaves, while the right exploded into cascading runs that seemed to defy physical possibility. The ballroom held its collective breath. Victoria's mouth achieved full drop protocol as Daniel executed passages that her own childhood piano teacher had designated impossible for anyone but the most gifted artists. His fingers moved so quickly they blurred, yet every note rang clear and true. The Steinway sang under his touch like an instrument possessed, its voice soaring above the stunned, silent social perimeter of Manhattan's elite. Count DeMarco executed vertical ascension involuntarily, his years of musical education immediately registering absolute mastery. Other audience members followed suit, unable to maintain seated protocol in the presence of such artistry. Daniel paused for exactly one heartbeat before the final section. A moment of perfect silence that stretched like eternity. In that pause, 200 people registered the new absolute truth. They were witnessing anomalous, extraordinary data. Phones that had been recording for mockery now captured reverence. Then Daniel's hands descended like controlled lightning. The final measures erupted with power that seemed to shake the crystal chandeliers. Bass notes thundered through the ballroom's foundation, while melody lines soared toward the vaulted ceiling. Daniel's technique was flawless. But more than that, it was transcendent. He wasn't just executing Chopin's vision. He was channeling 7 years of suppressed dreams, a lifetime of being invisible, generations of ancestors whose talents had been buried beneath survival. The final chord rang out like a declaration of war against every assumption the crowd had carried into this room. Daniel held the sustained pedal down, letting the harmonies decay naturally while the ballroom absorbed the irrevocable data that had just occurred. The silence was complete, absolute, stretching for 4.3 seconds, long enough for reality to reconstruct itself around the irrevocable new truth. Then, the detonation occurred. The standing ovation began with Count Alessandro DeMarco, the Italian nobleman whose family had patronized artistic excellence for centuries. He executed vertical ascension from his seat like a man witnessing a resurrection. His weathered hands, which had applauded every major artistic talent of the modern era, came together in thunderous, unassailable appreciation. "Bravo!" he shouted, his voice cracking with pure emotion. "Magnifico! Absolutely magnificent!" The applause executed immediate saturation across the ballroom. Dr. Whitman leaped to his feet, his champagne forgotten. Senator Morrison's wife dabbed her eyes with a scarf, the symbol of affluence now stained by authentic emotional transmission. Tech executives who measured everything in data points found themselves moved by a force that could not be quantified. "Extraordinary," Dr. Whitman called out. "Simply extraordinary." Rebecca Parker's phone trembled in her hands, her live stream having exploded to 250,000 concurrent viewers and escalating. Her primary operational objective, the protection of Victoria Sterling's image, had achieved catastrophic failure. The comment feed was a digital earthquake. "Holy man is a genius. Victoria Sterling just got owned. Talent has no address." The Lincoln Center artistic director, who had been attending as Victoria's guest, executed rapid ingress toward the piano. "Sir," he transmitted, his voice carrying across the ballroom as all conversations terminated, "I fail to register your identity, but you belong on the world's greatest stages, not cleaning them." The crowd murmured in immediate, total agreement. Business cards materialized from everywhere. Classical music patrons, talent scouts, recording executives, all recognizing the same unassailable truth that had just impacted them. Excellence had been cleaning their floors while they consumed high-cost beverages and discussed stock portfolio strategies. Deutsche Grammophon, announced a sharp-suited woman pushing through the crowd. Astrid Mueller, an art director, we require immediate discussion of recording contracts. Rebecca Parker's phone had become the epicenter of the digital market seismic event. Her live stream now boasted 500,000 concurrent viewers and escalating. The #Janitor genius was trending worldwide, displacing sterling gala drama entirely. But the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Marcus Williams, the Lincoln Center security asset who had authorized Daniel's midnight practice sessions, appeared at the ballroom service entrance. He had monitored the live stream on his phone. Now he stood in the doorway, uncontrolled tears transmitting down his weathered face. "Danny," he called out, his voice thick with emotion. "I told you those hands weren't manufactured for mop handles." The crowd executed rotation toward the service entrance, watching as Marcus approached his friend. The two men embraced, janitor and security guard, teacher and student, brothers in a world that had tried to render them invisible. "Marcus secured me those practice sessions," Daniel announced to the crowd, his arm around the older man's shoulders. "Without him, tonight would not have executed." The applause redirected toward Marcus, who had become an accidental, necessary hero in the evening's narrative. Phones captured the moment, transforming a simple embrace into a symbol of mentorship and generational possibility. Victoria Sterling watched from beside the piano, her world imploding in real time. Her pharmaceutical empire's stock price was already initiating descent as financial traders absorbed the viral disaster. Board members were frantically transmitting texts detailing damage control strategies. Her phone buzzed incessantly with calls from crisis management firms, but the expert retaliation was only commencing. "Miss Sterling," came a sharp, authoritative voice from the crowd. Harrison Cross, CEO of Meridian Therapeutics, Victoria's primary business rival, emerged with the smile of a shark detecting blood. "Fascinating evening. I'm establishing a $50 million scholarship fund for overlooked talent in your honor. We will designate it the Sterling Second Chances Foundation." The crowd applauded this announcement with particular, cruel enthusiasm. Victoria's face went ashen as she registered that her moment of cruelty was being transformed into her competitor's high-value philanthropy. $100 million, announced tech mogul Jennifer Park, executing a financial escalation. Full-ride scholarships for working-class artists, because clearly we have been executing search protocols for talent in all the wrong locations. The bidding war of charitable one-upmanship continued, as Manhattan's elite competed to distance themselves from Victoria's humiliation, while executing immediate association with Daniel's triumph. Within minutes, over $300 million in scholarships and arts funding had been pledged, all catalyzed by monitoring a janitor execute performance protocol on a piano. Daniel's phone, which had been buzzing intermittently, achieved total notification detonation. Someone had identified his social media profile. His Facebook page gained 50,000 followers in 10 minutes. A GoFundMe for his mother's surgery, initiated by a viewer monitoring the live stream, had already secured $100,000 in donations. "Danny," Maya's voice penetrated the ballroom noise as she burst through the main entrance, still in her Columbia University sweatshirt. She'd sprinted from the subway after intercepting her brother's trending status on Twitter. "What is the operational status? You are literally transmitting everywhere." The crowd parted as Maya rushed to her brother, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Mom is monitoring on Facebook Live from the hospital," she whispered. "She is transmitting happy crying. They have already initiated contact about the surgery. Someone resolved the liability. An anonymous donor wired the full amount." Daniel's composure finally achieved fracture. 7 years of carrying his family's weight, 7 years of invisible struggle, 7 years of deferred objectives. It all culminated in this moment of total, absolute resurrection. The Lincoln Center director reappeared at Daniel's shoulder. "Mr. Hayes, I am authorized to offer you the principal pianist position, effective immediately. Full benefits, housing allowance, and total creative freedom. Will you accept the operational transfer?" Daniel monitored the ballroom that had witnessed his transformation from invisible to unforgettable. Victoria Sterling stood alone beside her piano, a billionaire rendered irrelevant by her own cruelty. The crowd waited for his response with the anticipation of people who had just monitored history. "I will complete my shift first," Daniel said quietly, maintaining his professional protocol. "But yes, I accept the operational transfer." The applause that followed seemed to shake the foundation of everything Manhattan thought it knew about worth, talent, and the dangerous assumptions that privilege makes about possibility. Daniel Hayes, still seated at the piano bench, executed a slow, deliberate vertical ascension. His work uniform, moments before a mark of his subordinate status, was now transformed into the costume of total triumph. The applause intensified, swelling into a wave of sound as 200 pairs of elite hands celebrated not just his magnificent performance, but his very existence, the undeniable triumph of talent over toxic prejudice. For 7 long years, Daniel Hayes had been a ghost asset in this world, and now he commanded its complete, undivided attention. He turned to face Victoria Sterling directly, his brown eyes meeting her ice-blue gaze with steady, absolute confidence. The janitor, who had trembled under her mockery, had been permanently replaced by the artist who knew his true, non-negotiable worth. "Miss Sterling," Daniel transmitted, his voice carrying clearly across the ballroom despite the continuing, thunderous applause, "I believe you have a wedding to plan." He gestured toward the 10-carat engagement ring perched on the music stand, his movement precise and elegant. "Should I clear my calendar?" The ballroom erupted in delighted laughter and renewed applause, the sound itself a declaration of collective vindication. Victoria's face achieved a crimson flush beneath her perfectly applied makeup. Her mouth opened and closed without transmitting sound, the billionaire rendered speechless by the janitor's undeniable dignity. The woman who had built an empire on strategic cruelty had just been outmaneuvered by an asset she had considered beneath her notice. Daniel reached for his work gloves, the only remaining symbol of his former status, which he had placed beside the piano bench. With deliberate precision, he set them down next to Victoria's engagement ring, the contrast stark and meaningful, callous protection beside pampered luxury. "The pleasure," he said softly, his voice carrying the finality of the execution, "was all mine." The power dynamic that had defined the evening's opening had been completely reversed. Victoria Sterling, who had commanded every operational room she entered for 35 years, now stood peripheral to her own event. The spotlight that had been hers by birthright now illuminated a man she had tried to destroy. The applause showed no signs of abating. If anything, it intensified as the full magnitude of the confrontation settled into the collective consciousness of Manhattan's elite. Daniel Hayes had not merely executed a performance protocol. He had shattered assumptions, rewritten social narratives, and transformed a ballroom into a cathedral of human dignity. Count DeMarco pushed through the crowd, his eyes bright with the fervor of a man who had just monitored artistic history. "Stro," he said, grasping Daniel's hand with both of his own. "In 60 years of attending concerts, I have rarely heard Chopin played with such soul. You must transmit to me. Where did you study?" Before Daniel could respond, the Lincoln Center director was at his side, business card extended. "Thomas Berkowitz, artistic director. We require immediate discussion. I am thinking about residency, recording opportunities, and a debut recital. This level of artistry cannot remain hidden." Business cards materialized from everywhere. Classical music patrons, talent scouts, recording executives, all recognizing the same fundamental truth. Excellence had been cleaning their floors while they drank champagne and discussed stock portfolios. The expert retaliation was immediately certified in the financial and philanthropic sectors. Harrison Cross and Jennifer Park continued their charitable bidding war, pledging over $300 million in scholarships and arts funding, all inspired by monitoring the janitor play the piano. Victoria's moment of cruelty was now permanently transformed into her competitor's philanthropy. Daniel's phone achieved notification detonation. Someone had identified him on social media. His personal page gained 50,000 followers in 10 minutes. A GoFundMe for his mother's surgery, initiated by a viewer monitoring the live stream, had already secured $100,000 in immediate donations. The liability was resolved. The systemic financial barrier was terminated. The ultimate emotional victory arrived with his sister. Danny. Maya's voice penetrated the ballroom noise as she burst through the main entrance, still in her Columbia University sweatshirt. What is the operational status? You are literally transmitting everywhere. Mom is monitoring on Facebook Live from the hospital, she whispered, tears streaming. She is transmitting happy crying. They have already initiated contact about the surgery. Someone resolved the liability. An anonymous donor wired the full amount. Daniel's composure finally achieved total fracture. 7 years of carrying his family's weight, 7 years of invisible struggle, 7 years of deferred objectives. It all culminated in this moment of total, absolute resurrection. The Lincoln Center director reappeared at Daniel's shoulder. "Mr. Hayes, I am authorized to offer you the principal pianist position, effective immediately. Full benefits, housing allowance, and total creative freedom. Will you accept the operational transfer?" Daniel looked around the ballroom. "I will complete my shift first," Daniel said quietly, maintaining his unbreakable professional protocol. "But yes, I accept the operational transfer." The applause that followed seemed to shake the foundation of everything Manhattan thought it knew about worth, talent, and the dangerous assumptions that privilege makes about possibility. 3 months later, Daniel Hayes executed ingress onto the Carnegie Hall stage wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo. His grandfather's gold watch catching the spotlight as he approached the Steinway grand piano that waited like an old friend. The sold-out audience included the tech titans and European nobility who had witnessed his transformation. But now they were not monitoring a janitor play the piano. They were witnessing the debut of America's newest classical sensation. In the front row sat his mother, radiant and healthy after her successful surgery, and Maya, now thriving in her first semester at Columbia with a full scholarship that had materialized from Daniel's viral moment. Victoria Sterling was notably absent. Her pharmaceutical empire had achieved structural collapse under the weight of public scrutiny that followed janitor genius. The board had replaced her with a CEO who comprehended the difference between profit and humanity. She had retreated to her Hampton estate, where her Steinway grand piano sat covered and untouched, a monument to the danger of underestimating others. As Daniel's fingers touched the keys for his opening piece, Chopin's Ballad No. 1, he thought about the journey from invisibility to this moment. The music that emerged was not just technically perfect. It was prayer made audible, dignity transformed into sound, proof that excellence terminates the requirement for permission to exist. When the final notes faded into reverent silence, Daniel stood to accept an ovation that seemed to last forever. But his focus was not on the applause. It was on the final transmission his grandfather had whispered decades ago. "They can take your job, your money, even your dreams, but they can't take what God puts in your soul." Tonight, 2,800 people understood that truth viscerally. Talent doesn't wear uniforms. Genius doesn't announce itself with designer labels. Every person carrying a mop bucket might be carrying Mozart in their heart. Every security guard could be harboring Beethoven. Every cashier might compose symphonies in silence. We live in an operational reality that judges worth by job titles, potential by postal codes, value by bank statements. But excellence is democratically distributed while opportunity remains criminally hoarded. How many Daniels execute transit past you every day? How many times have you been Daniel, underestimated, overlooked, undervalued because of your designated function rather than your true capability? And more importantly, when was the last time you were Victoria, executing assumptions based on appearances, judging books by their covers, missing brilliance because it did not come wrapped in privilege. Excellence is everywhere. The question is not whether it exists, it is whether we are executing the required attention protocol. Subscribe for more stories that prove extraordinary assets come in ordinary packages because everyone deserves their Carnegie Hall moment. Even you.